Right on, welcome back. wrenchnation.tv. Come hang with us there. You can catch your favorite show. We had Magnus Walker on there, Spike Fairston, and of course, last week's shows uploaded. Over 240 shows. You'll find something for you. Big shout out to KFNX on the weekend. Thank you for hanging in all of our podcast family with a shop that'll have you drooling from afar or really drooling in-house. About 4,500 square feet of custom and hot rod heaven. Voodoo Larry has an array of complete frame-up builds alongside some eclectic daily drivers that may just be waiting for a little twist of a mild custom. With the eye and the gift of the build and that vision, we're honored to have Voodoo Larry out of Chicago, Illinois, I should say, not out of Chicago, Elk Grove, Illinois. Voodoo Larry, you there?
I sure am.
Right on, brother. I know you're busy. I know, and we so appreciate you making some time for fans of the Wrench Nation, man.
Awesome, cool, man. Well, I'm here.
Yeah.
Let's talk some cars, man.
Let's get going.
We
right,
do.
Larry?
We just got to hit it right hard. We'll talk about your history in a minute. But we were, and I want you guys to check this out. Voodoo Sahara. That car was I've never seen anything built like that. Tell us the inspiration and a little bit about that build project that you highlighted recently out in California.
Well, the whole thing started was, I know you guys had mentioned earlier about taking cars to paper and to building them. I forget the paper. What I do is I go right into building the car itself.
Wow.
The car's
Oh, my
in front
God.
of me.
Man, that's like Scratch Kitchen, man.
Yeah, I don't draw anything out. You know, it takes more time to draw a picture of a car than it would be just to modify the car while it's in front of you, you know?
I love that. Yeah.
So basically what the whole thing started was, as a kid, I fell in love with the original Golden Sahara that George Barris built back in 1953 from his 53 Lincoln Capri, and I always wanted to build that car myself. So I think what happened was, years ago I got this Kaiser, 54 Kaiser, and I looked at the body lines, and it was a rot bucket. The thing was ready to go to the junkyard, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I got to start building this car. I'm going to build the Golden Sahara. But I wanted to build it in my terms. I've been building cars for 45 years, and I'm like, I'm going to build this car for myself, but I'm going to build it on my style.
But still honor
yeah.
that George Barris custom, right? But just give it all kinds of your twists. I mean, it seems like a lot of your rides are in the heritage of George Barris.
Yeah, more old school styling. You can have a modern drivetrain in a car, no problem with that. But I try to keep my cars old school looking on the outside. Error correct as much as I can find the error correct parts for nowadays, which are getting hard to find too. So basically, I build the car around to whatever parts I have laying around, and I just keep building.
Wow, there's no fancy there.
Yeah, none at all. So,
Pretty much.
So, hey, Larry, going into that, how much metal is in the back end of that car?
Let's put it like this. There is about 14 sheets of 4x8 20-gauge sheet metal in that whole car.
Wow.
14 sheets. Okay, that's, and a lot of the car is still actually underneath the original, all the sheet metal I put on the outside. A lot of the original car is still under there, except for the rotted stuff. I cut all that out, obviously, and, modified it from a 4-door car to a 2-door car. And then pretty much the whole back half of the car is scratch built. I use many miles of round bar. And basically, I built a framework of that and then wrapped the sheet metal around that.
It has such a presence. Am I understanding this right, that you originally bought this ride at the time, going back to 2014, you bought a Kaiser for your girlfriend, Colette?
Yeah.
And
then,
did you have a parts car?
Actually, it came with a parts car.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Car.
Okay.
Yeah, the parts car was basically ready to go to the junkyard, so I took all the parts off that I needed, and basically I couldn't send it to the junkyard, and I had a clear title for it, so that's why I decided, I'm just going to build the Sahara, and that's where that led to from there. And then it took me about 13 months to do all the metal fab. And this is after hours. Obviously I'm building 11 cars for my customers in my shop. And I'm a one-man shop. I have no employees. It's me building cars here. And basically, I'd spend early mornings, late nights, and still spending 8 to 9 hour day on customer stuff.
Larry, I got to ask you, because you just indicated some incredible productivity, and then to add to the incredible, like on steroids, like you don't have any drawings, man. I mean, this is so there's like you what.
Speechless.
No, the eyes, man. What's with have you had your eyes tested? I mean, dude, no, seriously, the production that you, I mean, you're running and gunning all day building for your clients, and then you're working after hours. And by the way, you can get online. I think you've got some YouTube videos which I really admired. They were quick, they were precise. You were showing folks some of how you do it and sharing that knowledge.
Yeah, there's a few videos on like bead rolling and sheet metal work and stuff like that. For me being a one-man shop, it's hard for me to film myself, working on stuff. So, and I've had a lot of calling for, to do more YouTube videos, and I'd love to, but trying to set up a camera for me to be, on me working all day.
It's work,
really
dude.
hard to do.
It's work. It's work without a squad. Well,
is.
let me ask you this: right now, the industry's seeing a shortage of technicians on sort of the retail side. I'm sure Greg on the custom side, just all across the board. If you could find some talent, would you hire them? Or is that something you just like to work alone?
Well, back in the day, the last time I had an employee was about 9 years ago, and my customers bring their cars to Voodoo Larry for him to, for me to build. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to build the cars myself. If they're willing to wait and have a good, product at the end, then I'll just keep building myself. I'll be 57 in a couple days, and I'm not done building yet. Look at like Gene Winfield. The guy's 94 years old, and he's still doing all this stuff. And I look up to him. I've known him for about 39 years. Actually, probably about 42 years now. And I always look up to him and George Barris and all the other legends of customizing. And I just look at it like, if they can do it, I know I can do it. And I try to help out my younger buddies. My brother Chad down in Florida, he's a young guy and he's starting out, and I'm trying to keep this going by doing these chop classes and metal shop classes to show these younger guys to get out their garages and start doing stuff. You can have the basics of tools. You don't need the expensive power hammers and all this stuff. You can do the stuff like when I started out doing the cars 45 years ago in the garage with basics of tools to build your own stuff.
Yeah.
You really put your
goal
signature.
Is to try to do this, try to help the younger generation,
Yeah, no, that's solid. And you guys get onto on the internet, you can find, man, you're all over, like Instagram, even Pinterest, man. There's a ton of stuff for you on Pinterest. Because these cars.
Is there really? I didn't even know that.
You got a lot of stuff. My point is this: so I want to get back to the build. We have had a variety of folks, Johnny D, D'Agostino, and
Johnny D is a friend of mine. He's an awesome guy.
He is an awesome guy. He's amazing. He's one of the original gangsters going back like yourself in that whole custom build. Has some great builds behind his name. Very well respected. But what comes to mind, which I'm trying to wrap my head around, I mean, you're more true artists. Like artists don't paint a picture and say, well, I need a couple more painters to help me paint this picture. You've actually got it down to where you're at peace with self. And your vision, you see, you get done.
Right. Like I said, building my own cars is, and a lot of people say, wow, you finish your car so fast. Well, if I'm going to spend, 20 hours a day in the shop, I'm going to spend eight or 9 hours a day on my customer stuff and then, work on my stuff another 8 hours a day. So, a lot of times, that's how I get my cars done. I have customers say, oh, man, my car's not done yet. Well, when I spend 20 hours a day in the shop, that means I'm spending 8 hours a day on just my stuff alone, or 10, 12 hours, Yeah. So a lot of times that's how I try to get my stuff done a little faster than normal,
Well, you have a routine. I mean, certain cuts.
Exactly.
And that, well, Greg, it's like anything else. I think they say it's 10,000 hours of doing something like a pilot's license, I believe. I think a Cessna is 1,000 hours. No, there's a book out there, and I you guys know more than I listening, but it's about 10,000 hours. And then you've somewhat not mastered, but you got to a point where you can do it efficient, and it's rhythm in the hands.
Yeah.
And
I think going back to Larry's, his direction on how he builds cars, Larry, you're doing your own thing, and even though some people do get frustrated with builds, because I've been on that side of it, man, when they pick it up, they forget all that stress when they pick it up. They cruise it down the road, and I know Larry's the same.
Larry, how do you describe? I'm going to just use the word climax. I mean, for a lot, actually take it bare bones to a mechanic that may have struggled with a simple clutch job on a 4-wheel drive Nissan. I'm just saying, when they're done, there's a level of boost and adrenaline, and a feel good to, hey, I'm coming back. I'll do that next one. You obviously feel that.
Yeah, well, see, what goes back here, I'm going to go back a ways here now, and this is probably going on about 20-something years ago. I always said, there needs to be a cool TV show on custom cars and building custom cars and fabrication time and all this. And then all of a sudden, shows started coming out, and then it got to be all drama.
Yep.
And it's like, don't get me wrong, I like some of the shows, I watch county cars and bitch and rides and stuff, but it's one of those things that they don't show enough of the fabrication time. And in my world is, and I have a lot of people like, man, it would be really cool if Voodoo can do more fabrication videos and do maybe YouTube videos or a TV show. They're not going to do a TV show on me because I don't have employees. They like the drama stuff. I know that's modern day now.
They want to see coffee spilt on a $10,000 upholstery.
Exactly.
Screw that. We had Will Lockwood on, and it's one of the things that he said. Dave Kindig, he was like, you know what? I'm not doing this and playing by those funky rules. And and that's why I think that's why they have a following. And I think you're speaking to that. No time for drama. Let's get it on.
Not at all. It's not even entertaining anymore.
No.
It's getting to the point where it's like, metal fabrication does take time, and that's one thing I try to explain to my customers. It's not something that's going to get done in a day. It may not be something to get done in 2 years. I'll have cars in my shop 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer. But it's one of those things that people want to see how to do stuff. They want to learn stuff. They want to go in their garage and like, oh man, I just saw this on a TV show last night, and this is how he did it. Not somebody throwing cookies across the floor or whatever, or throwing
it's trivial.
A bitch about something. But it's one of those things that let's get in our garages, let's get in our shops like I did 45 years ago, and let's make something from nothing. Let's learn how to chop a top. Let's learn how to French a set of headlights or taillights or shave door handles or French an antenna. And it's one of those things that back in the day, we had magazines. We didn't have social media. We didn't have TV shows. We had magazines. We had literature. We had looked at pictures, and I'm proud to say, I grew up in that era by having pictures in pocket-sized magazines back in the day to build my cars. And that's how I learned from the old styling, customizing that these guys, these guys torch welded everything. There was no MIG welders. There was no TIG welders.
Yeah.
Everything was torch welded with coat hangers or, bar stock or whatever. And these guys built some real radical customs. And I'm talking about stuff back in the Barris days and the Gene Winfield early days and, Joe Ballion and Bill Hines and all those guys. Bill Hines was known as the lead slinger. That guy cover a whole car in lead and fabricate it, and that thing would be like a jewel when it was done. Yeah. They don't nowadays. It's everything is modern technology. They have modern special bondos and fillers and all this stuff to build these cars, which is fine. That's great. But back in the day, people forgot about the old school style of building.
Yeah,
and that's where I learned when I came in as being a young kid. I learned how to fabricate and bend metal in the grass in the backyard with a ball peen hammer.
Old school, man.
A tree stump.
Old school. We're going to talk more about that if you're just joining us. Honored to have Voodoo Larry Kustoms. You guys get on Instagram. We're going to take a quick break. I will tell you the 10,000-hour rule that I was talking about. That's Malcolm Gladwell's blockbuster book, Outliers. It basically says it takes 10,000 hours of intensive practice to achieve mastery of complex skills and so on. Wow. So I try to examine, like in my world, I'm sure, Larry, you probably don't even think about it, but, how long, how many years does it take? Well, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that when we come back from the break. Welcome back, Wrench Nation. Get on to wrenchnation.tv. As I tell you every week, if you guys dip in and out of the show, it's all good. You guys get busy. Get onto the podcast, and you can listen at your leisure over a cocktail, whatever have you. And then please, if you know anybody that you think will enjoy the show, share the show with them. And lastly, if you have a rock star automotive mechanic, technician, builder, fabricator in the industry, we got an open mic always for the talent, as we love to highlight the good works. Voodoo Larry Grobe started building cars way back when, starting back when he was 18, and runs out of his shop, about a 4,500 square foot facility, and one of the many 5-star online reviews, quote, an artist that cares about his work, close quote. Welcome back, Voodoo Larry.
What's going on? I'm here.
Yeah. No, man, we appreciate it. I did actually check out your reviews. Some of the risk of not being able to really put out the vision for your client, I can get it in that arena, is having 3 or 4 people that don't meet the vision. So you are solo, you are proud, and that's where your heart is.
Pretty much. Like I said, 45 years I've been doing this, so it sticks to heart,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great that you have the vision and you don't hand it off to someone else. Even though there's a lot of cool builds with that aspect, but for you to have your vision and you to keep it to yourself and then execute it, it's amazing, Larry. Great.
I mean, I want to do something like that, dude.
Yeah,
Some
I
days
wish.
I get, let me tell you something. Mr. Larry, I had 3 locations. I think I had, I don't know, 27 employees at one time. And it's stressful because you end up leaving the Bay. I mean, you still got to build your business, processes, all this kind of stuff. But I'm in an office and I'm like, I want to be out in the shop with my people.
Right, you get locked in.
And honestly, I was not that multi-store guy. I sold and I have the one big daddy and we're doing fine and I'm able to get in the back shop. There are ways to do the process. I use Ken Diggett. He's got a whole team over there. But we had Von Hot Rod on, I think it was episode 220. You guys can check that show out. Part of building these customs, we talked early on in the show, the definition of custom with the K. Could you help our audience identify and understand what that whole custom car culture is all about? Von Hot Rod, described it in his way. He's living it just like you, day in and day out. What's that all about, this whole custom car culture?
Okay, so we're going to go back here to the early Barris days now. And from what I heard, and I'm talking about, George Barris was a friend of mine, and I looked up to him, and like I said, all the legends of customizing. But from what I remember, and if you guys remember a guy, his name was Kenneth Howard, and he went by Von Dutch.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And he was also a pinstriper, as I am too. And Von Hot Rod, he's been a pinstriper. I've been pinstriping for about almost 40 years now. And one day, George had Kenneth Howard come to his shop and pinstripe one of his cars. And I remember reading an article, and I don't remember how long ago this was. It's many years ago. But I remember George left Kenneth in his shop all night long. He had a bottle of whiskey there, and he drank, and he pinstriped his car the whole night. And when George came in the next morning, the whole car was covered in pinstriping. I think it was like a Woody wagon that George had. And I remember this article said something about, Kenneth said something to George, and he goes, you know what? You got to be different. You got to name customs with a K instead of with a C. Everybody names cars with customs with a C, but you got to be different and name it with a K. And I remember that story stuck with me now for at least 25, 30 years.
There's your driving pants. That's
Yep.
your passion right there. That in itself is where you picked up, because I'm going to ask you, way back when, driveway, starting out small, learning.
Yeah.
That was, and for you guys listening, there's a ton of great information regarding Von Dutch. He's one of the original pioneers.
Yep.
The guy was really eclectic. I mean, he was, grew up out there in Compton High School. Was a bit of an athlete. In fact, he was referred to as the fastest man in L.A., and they gave him the nickname Dutch because he was as stubborn, as a Dutchman. That's kind of how that all started, and you guys can find all of that. In fact, shout out to Kustom Rama. In fact, they did a ton of write-up on your shop as well, KUSTOM, Rama.com. If you're interested, you can see that. And so you're like, you know what? That lit me up. That is different. I'm getting down with the K and not the C. Nothing against the custom rides and those builds, but you really wanted your signature, and that's what it's all about, individual signature.
Right. Now, obviously, as time progressed now, customs kept progressing as time went on. So people are like, they're looking at like a 70 Camaro that's fully customized. That would be considered as custom with a C. We're talking about 30s, 40s, 50s, and maybe even 60s customs. That stuck with that era of custom with a K. Now, as time progressed, obviously we're in the 2000s now, and now even if they modified a car, it would still be custom with a C, because you would modify a new car. Like some of the younger guys nowadays, they would be customizing a Mitsubishi or a Nissan.
I was just
they
going
would
to
still
say
be
that.
customizing them, but that would be considered as custom with a C.
So it's really
the old school stuff.
Yeah, it's still the old school with a SK. OOL.
Yes.
I mean, I get what you're saying, that era. I mean, you can't take an 85 LeBaron. I mean, I'm not seeing that as a future classic, but there's certain criteria. Let's talk about that, because there's a whole musical movement. You're a bass player. You get down in the community, you do a ton of sessions and work and neighborhood get downs and such.
Exactly.
That's a part of that whole movement. If one were listening now, could I ask you what musician could flavor it up? What group is out there right now that really, like we introed the show with the Budos band. I think they're pretty cool. A lot of brass, deep baritones. What group is out there that could maybe set somebody, light them up to get into that custom car culture? What group's out there?
Well, I'm a rockabilly guy. I've been a rockabilly guy since 1980. And, when, Stray Cats, finally came into the scene, as being a young kid, I grew up, my mom listened to Elvis and Gene Vincent, Eddie Cochran, Bill Haley and the Comets. So as time progressed, as me being a young kid, graduating high school in 82, I fell in love with the Stray Cats. It was like top 40, but it was rockabilly. And I'm like, oh my God, there's actually a rockabilly band that played on the radio. And I'm like, that was me. It's like I wanted to be there. So my all-time favorite band, I think, don't get me wrong, I love the classics, and I play many Elvis songs and stuff in my band. But I think it was the Stray Cats that really kept me going through the 80s to nowadays. Brian Setzer and Lee Rocker and Slim Jim and all that. So it was one of those things. Seeing my first Stray Cats concert in 1981, it stuck with me ever since. And I'm like, I want to learn to play upright bass.
And
believe it or not,
and live
I didn't
it.
even start playing bass till I was 32 years old. So I'm
love it.
still a newcomer,
Yeah, if you're just joining us, you guys get on the Instagram at Voodoo Larry Kustoms with 2 S's and a K. Voodoo Larry Kustoms. I invite you guys to get on that Instagram feed. You will see all kinds of stuff. One of the things, let's talk about that Voodoo Psychosis. Man, I love the names. I know. Voodoo in itself is good enough, but that's a Model A coupe that you built that sold at Barrett Jackson back in 2015 with some fanfare. What was the inspiration behind that Model A?
Honestly, I started out as a custom kid. I was a custom kid back in the day, and I started building my custom cars, shaving door handles and French headlights. But one day I told myself, I want to build myself a hot rod. So what happened was, and I've built, quite a few before that car. So when the Psychosis came around, I'm like, I want to do a traditional era style. I'm talking about like mid-50s, almost like 1960 era hot rod, not 40s, not 30s. I want to build something a little bit newer of the styling, but make it nicer, So I started winning awards with this car. I went to Detroit and I won multiple awards at one show, and I'm like, that was really cool. So I started building more rods for customers. I'm actually building 4 right now in the shop right now for customers.
Wow.
Yeah, you guys, Motor Trend did a whole snapshot of the Voodoo Psychosis. Incredible. I'm a fan of the rat rod. I mean, I love, that's like a deeper level. And also, I'll be honest with you, of course, with your build, it sounds like people are coming to you first and foremost for the vision, the uniqueness, and the quality of work that you're doing as a craftsman. That's what it's about. But what I like about the rat rods, it's like you can have the drivetrain, tires, somewhat of an interior, and rough it, and it looks great.
And
all
it comes
oxidized,
comes out awesome.
all chopped. And I invite you guys, check out motortrend.com, did a story, just type in the Voodoo Psychosis, and you'll get more in depth. But what a wonderful ride, man. I love the rat rods.
The nice thing about that car is, and a lot of people would think it was a rat rod, but that was a very well built car.
Yeah, it is. I don't mean to belittle it. Yeah.
A lot of detailing, So there's a term between a hot rod and rat rod nowadays. And nowadays people are building these cars for $2,500 in a garage floor in their garage, and some of them are getting unsafe. So it's one of those things that let's spend a little more time, let's spend a little bit more money, and make our hot rod a little bit nicer, so we have a nice solid car, something safe to drive. Yeah. So when I built a car called the Voodoo Deville many years ago. It was a 3-foot tall car, but it was very well crafted. And the reason why people call it rat rod, because it had a patina body. It still had a little bit of rust on there. It had the original paint from 1927 Dodge, but everybody called it a rat rod. And nowadays, a lot of people are taking the term rat rod to a whole different level, which honestly, when they're starting to call full custom cars rat rods, it's like, no, that's not.
Well,
it.
I'll tell you what.
Go back to the early days, the jalopy days, in the 40s and 50s,
Yeah. And you just answered. I was going to ask you the question just to clarify, for my knowledge anyway. I mean, and I didn't mean to call that ride a rat rod, but what you're saying is, hey, be careful. There's a definition of rat rod, which is, more basic, maybe not as structured.
Yes.
If you have a rat rod with a custom frame, bag suspension, that doesn't fall under rat rod anymore at all.
I had a
That'd
20.
be a hot rod. It would be a,
It would,
it would be
yeah.
a hot rod.
That's not a rat rod.
Yeah, I had a 23 C cab. I got to tell you this story, Larry. 23 C cab, big slicks, had teak wood on the back, had a Schlitz keg, all kegger, all chromed out. Had the steering wheel up, straight up, from floorboard.
I need a picture of this.
I have
like
some, but I got a story, and I think it relates to the quality. And I picked this up. This is back in 90. God, my first garage, 94, 95. And I said, man, this is cool. I got a hot rod. Picked it up for dirt cheap. Had the 455 all chromed out, open ceramic headers. I put nose cones so people wouldn't burn themselves. They'd walk up. I drove with my daughter at the time. She was 5. I took it on the freeway. Everything was cool. That following morning, as I'm driving to the shop, that pop metal center link broke. And I was doing about 30, 40 miles an hour, 19th Avenue. And it was like, okay, she's going where she's going. You have no control of steering.
Wow.
And I ended up selling it because I thought of my daughter. I'm like, you fool, this can be dangerous. And that's what you're speaking on. A lot of these basic builds can be
unsafe.
The guys are building their floorboards in their cars out of license plates. I mean, you're putting your seats and your feet and everything on top of license plates. What are license plates made out of? Tin?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. Be a little safer. I mean, a lot of guys are running no front brakes on some of these cars now. You got to remember, when a car is done, you're looking at 1,500 to 2,500 pound car stopping on just rear brakes.
Yeah.
So when I build my rods, I put full brakes. And you don't need disc brakes on a hot rod. I mean, they don't weigh that much. Back in the day, you got to remember some of these cars ran on drum brakes all the way around. So when I build my rods, I build them with drum brakes, but I rebuild everything new. I don't put old beat up parts that have been in the car since 1940 or 1930. So I rebuild everything.
Yep.
So remember, you got to be safe. You're trying to stop 2,000 pounds or 2,500 pounds. And a lot of people nowadays, they think you're driving a Mitsubishi.
Yeah.
So you got to stop these cars. But
there's no traction control on something like that. Yeah.
So hey, Larry, I want to take you back to the Voodoo Sahara. Obviously, we heard your story right now. Now, from it was your vision all these years, and then your fabrication time. You need to tell me how you felt when that thing pulled out of the shop and was done after all those years. How did you feel about that?
Well, I do have to say, when I sent the car, I only do metal fab. I don't do paint and body anymore. So I have my guys. So I sent the car out west to Kansas to have my buddy Matt Murray. He did all the paint and body in the car, and he did just a fabulous job. When that car came back to me as a finished, complete car, after the interior was done, and my buddy Bruce Mapes out there, and he's my upholstery guy, and my glass guy, Chicago, Brian, he did a great job on helping me with the glass and stuff. When that car was finished, I couldn't believe it. There's some videos, you see some videos on us, some YouTube videos and stuff. But when I saw that car rolling for the first time, it's like, wow, that's a 5,000 pound car, and that car is going to be just a showstopper.
Right.
When I was building this car with all this time and all the sheet metal and round bar and just trying to figure out how things go, I had 5 pictures of the original Golden Sahara in my phone. Trying to look at pictures and blowing up pictures in my cell phone. That's how I built that car. I didn't have any drawings. I didn't have any pictures. I had 5 pictures of the original Golden Sahara George built in my phone, and that's what got me to build that car with what I had.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, that's an incredible ride. Again, Voodoo Larry Kustoms with a K, and not just the Sahara.
Yeah.
In fact, I was setting up for the Fountain Valley Car Show, and I saw this car, and
on top of the hill on the grass.
And I got to tell you, and my apologies, I wanted to spend a whole lot more time, and of course, we're all busy. People were coming up, hey, look at that, their stories, and we knew we were going to get you on the show eventually. But man, I couldn't stop looking at that car. I'd lost focus, honestly, with everything else. I mean, we're talking focus. I had
hours with that talking about that. I can tell you 4 more hours of that stuff that went.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, I believe it.
And all night we could talk.
Yeah, no, I believe it. And I got to ask you, many are listening now, whether they go to Voodoo Larry Kustoms or whether they, approach a Ken Diggett or many other great. They don't have to all be on TV, but any other great builder. What are some of the mistakes that a client can do by way of approaching you? And then if I can follow up with that and ask you, should they get some consultation? I think that some of these, in all due respect, we've had them on the show. Craig Jackson and his team, Barrett Jackson, do an amazing job. Russo and Steele, Mr. Alcazar, had him on the show. Great people. But how does one prove what they bought if it's not a signature name and a really high end? Let's say they get, Greg, let's say they get a $25,000 to $35,000, whatever Camaro,
Right.
or we want to go back out of the Camaros. Let's go back into a 55 Merc. All right, it's not chopped, and then it comes to you. What advice do you have for someone before they buy it, and how they should approach you with a project build? How do you handle that? What advice would you have?
Okay, well, first of all, I would tell the customer if they're looking to get a car, buying a car that needs to be done, and it may not be done to begin with. It might be a stock original that's rusted in somebody's garage or a barn found car. I tell them, first of all, it's going to take you quite a few years. And this is one thing I tell my customers. I said, this is not a cheap hobby to be into by no means. A lot of times, and I'm going to tell you guys, a lot of times people see stuff done on TV. Oh, my God, it took that long, but it took you this long, because I'm not talking about TV time. I'm talking about realistic time. When I spend an 8-hour day, it could be just welding up rain gutter on a car. But in TV time, they looked at it as, it took 5-10 minutes on a TV show. And I tell people, do not look at a TV show when it comes to fabrication time. I'm going to tell you right now, be ready to spend money. It's one of those things that we all have to pay our bills. Anybody in this whole wide world has to pay our bills. But don't go by TV time. And don't get me wrong, I love watching it. I'll be honest with you guys, when I watch YouTube videos anymore. I haven't even seen regular TV in probably 2 years now. I haven't seen regular cable in about 2 years right now. So I watch a lot of YouTube videos. It's more information. There's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of how-tos.
A lot more organic. Yep. It's not as much highly produced and sizzled. I will add to that, and a lot of our mechanics, our retail guys and gals that work in the trenches, dealing with lines of code and stuff on these new vehicles, we have the same problem. It's like you cannot think a check engine light is a free situation when you're dealing with 50 million lines of code. And that's what you're speaking on. So tread lightly. What do you got coming up? I want to send people to where you're at. What you got some top secret announcements?
I'm actually going to have the Sahara, the Voodoo Sahara, is going to be at Viva Las Vegas this year.
Oh,
it was supposed to be there 2 years ago, but the whole Corona hit, and then it was actually supposed to do a whole West Coast tour. It was supposed to go from Grand National, and was supposed to go up to Sacramento, but right after Grand National 2 years ago, the whole Corona hit, and it got put away for a year. But it's still out west. It's still out west. My buddy Alfredo's out there. He's got it stored in his garage and ready to do Viva coming up in next month.
Wow,
so
is that like a residency?
Viva this year is a feature car.
So will it be there for a long time on display, or just a one-time deal?
It will be there for the Viva weekend.
That's like the Elvis 2 with Johnny D out in La La Land in Los Angeles. Yeah. In fact, he had said, I don't know if you probably talked to him about the show, but he was like, we had to move it. There were riots, and that's his baby. That's his build. That's like a child. But exactly. we'll catch up. I'm sure we'll catch up. SEMA, Vegas, we got a ton of gigs coming out. In fact, I remind everybody, the Las Vegas concourse, totally whole different. This is more Highline concourse.
A couple weeks before, right?
In that, I'll have the dates on the website. But Voodoo Larry Kustoms, K2S's, Instagram. Mr. Larry Grobe, man, an honor to hang with you.
Thanks, guys. It was awesome talking to you guys, and
Absolutely.
we'll hopefully we'll do another show sometime soon, right?
Yeah, brother, we'll catch up with you. We'll catch up with you for sure.
Awesome, guys. You have a good night, and everybody out there in the whole wide radio land, have a good night, too.
Hey, thanks,
Peace.
Larry.
Good night with
Thanks,
a K. With a K, baby.
That's good right there.
Hey, listen, awesome. I'm taking you up. Brother JD, you, myself, there's a few others. Make sure you keep that bass handy, because we are going to jam impromptu. Us bass clef, you treble clef people can't mess with bass clef family.
You promise? We'll rock, man.
I'm not joking with you. Be surprised.
Crazy.
See you, Larry.
All All right, peace, guys.
All right, that's part of Kustom Car culture, man. Out of Illinois. A lot of you think that it's just an East Coast build or a West Coast. And there's so many great, talented folks right in the Midwest. Let's kick up the Straight Cats. We got it. We got it. Yeah. So that is the style, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. I do want to make an announcement. This is pretty incredible. We talk about technology, and I want to wrap up and let you guys know. Waymo Via, you've seen them running around town here locally in Arizona, and for those of you outside the market, I think there's 3 other marketplaces. Waymo Autonomous is here. Well, guess what, people? One of the largest trucking agencies, firms, Ryder, has teamed up with Waymo for the autonomous truck platform. My brother's an over-the-road trucker. Not that he's nervous, but autonomous trucking with supply chain concerns going on and how things are backed up. You guys know Tenneco. This was announced at an industry show that I was a part of. 750,000 shocks and struts and parts are sitting on ships at Long Beach. The supply chain is so. This is an announcement made today. You can catch the blog post. You get on a Waymo Via. They're building a dedicated trucking hub out in South Dallas that will be its primary operations center in Texas and be a central launch point to increase testing. They're coming out of Arizona doing more testing. Autonomous, man, is here.
Wow, that's going to be crazy to see that happen.
Trucking,
wow.
It is. And I think I predict that our grandkids will laugh at us. You guys drove? Really?
Yeah, right? What's that?
Exactly. Always a great time to hang with you guys. Make sure you check out our podcasts, and if you can, wrenchnation.tv. We are going to be out at SEMA, Apex, some of the industry shows. So if you see us out there, catch us. Wrenchnation.tv. Always family with you guys. Thank you so much. As I tell you every week, be safe, hug each other, and never forget to hug a mechanic.